Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Conspiracy Farm, where we don't start the conspiracies, we just add the water. And now, your host of the most state-of-the-art, most informed podcast on the interweb, I present to you Pat Miletich and Jeffrey Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for war?
Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Off to the races for another great episode. I'm riding shotgun, as always, with my partner in crime, UFC Hall of Famer, champion amongst champions, eater of worlds, Pat Miletich. How are we doing today, champ?
Well, I'm doing great, Jeffrey, and I'm excited about our guest today. We have had the questions come up about this subject matter, stem cell research, several times over the past 3 years, and I'm just excited to get into it. I'd love for you to introduce our guest, and then he can expound upon your introduction, and we can get into the heavy meat.
Absolutely, and there is plenty there, my friend. And it's very kind of interesting how the universe works. I've been watching the videos from this organization, BioXcellerator.com. That's bio with an X, accelerator.com. I mean, obviously you have, experience with Matt Hughes. We've all seen what's gone on with Matt Hughes. He's down there getting some stem cell therapy from his accident a few years ago. They're working with everybody. Matt Hughes, Ken Shamrock, Kevin Nash, 96 Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle, and former WWE legend Chris Cyborg, Chael Sonnen. They're working with a little bit of everybody, and I'm so anxious to get into this conversation so we can kind of cut through kind of the myths and disinformation and really kind of get to the heart of the matter, because there's so much more information about this therapy. And I'm just really thankful that he's taken the time to come down and anxious to get into it with him. He is the National Director of Athletic Performance for BioXcellerator. David Truitt is joining us today. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, absolutely. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's an honor.
Well, and it's also funny because
sorry, Jeff.
No,
I was going to say tell the fans at home a little bit more about our connection anyway behind the scenes.
Yeah, guys. So this is a pretty interesting situation. I mean, I've had the opportunity to do a couple podcasts here over 2019, and I know there's a couple other opportunities that are lined up. But this one is very unique in the sense that I actually grew up in Davenport, Iowa, where Pat has spent a large portion of his life. And when I was in high school, Jeff, I was telling Pat earlier today when we were on a phone call. I used to actually go to Miletich's gym in Bettendorf, Iowa, when I was in high school, and my best friend and I would sit on the mats and watch Matt Hughes and Jens Pulver and Tim Sylvia and all these guys spar. And, when you're growing up as a kid in the Quad Cities or, a kid in around the Davenport, Iowa area, even Pat, there's that name like, oh, he's Pat Miletich. That he's a badass, right? So it's just really cool how, life plays out. And 15 years later, I'm working with Matt Hughes, and now I'm sitting here recording a podcast with Pat.
It's
amazing
God works in mysterious ways,
and I love that. I just absolutely love how that works out. So, if you don't mind, I mean, my goodness, dude. I mean, obviously, some champions can come from the Quad Cities. Tell us how you've, that bridged that gap from us from the Quad Cities, Davenport, Iowa, to how you got to working with BioXcellerator.
Yeah,
and a little bit of background on yourself, obviously.
Yeah, so basically, guys, I grew up in the Quad Cities area, went to Davenport West High School, graduated there in 2007, and then, went on to play a couple years of junior college football. I played a year out in Mason City, Iowa, played a year at Ellsworth Community College in Iowa Falls. Had the opportunity to try and walk on at the University of Iowa, and then suffered a shoulder injury that required that I had to get surgery on my labrum, and I just had multiple concussions as well. So, at 31 years old, guys, I'm sitting here with 6 concussions, 3 of them classified as severe, and was doing a little bit of amateur MMA and fighting out there at Amsterdam, as Pat's probably been out there and seen a few of the fights back in the days, and it really just got to a situation, guys, where I got tired of cold weather and I got tired of snow, and just up and moved to Phoenix, Arizona one day. And I mean, it was very much an Old West tale of I woke up, called my best friend Mitch Payne in Bettendorf, Iowa, and said, "Hey man, I'm leaving in 10 days." And he went, "What the hell are you talking about?" And I told him I was going to pack up and head west. And I've always been a sports memorabilia collector. And even as a young kid, I wasn't the guy that wanted to go to the parties and drink and hang out with the cool kids. I wanted to go to the Quad City River Bandits game, or go to Chicago and catch a Cubs game, or, go to Iowa City and see the Hawkeyes. And so for me, I always surrounded myself in athletics, and I've lived, breathed, and just slept athletics every moment of my life. And, when I got that opportunity to take the autographs and the things that I had collected and sell them so that I could really kind of go and start my adult life, I took that opportunity. So I sold all my stuff on Craigslist, eBay, wherever I could to get rid of it, made roughly $5,000 in cash over a 10-day period. And I'm not kidding you guys. I packed up my Chevy Cobalt with my flat screen TV, my laptop, and Xbox, and whatever clothes I could fit in the car, and I headed to Arizona. No job lined up, no place to live, didn't know a single person in the city. And my dad's going, "Are you freaking nuts?" And I went, "Dad," I told my dad, guys, I said, "Listen," I said, "people used to do this 100 years ago in a horse-drawn carriage, not going to a city. I'm a pretty smart guy. I got a lot of personality. I'll figure it out." And I've been here February 1st, 2020 will be 10 years that I've been in the desert.
That's
wow,
awesome.
Man. Congratulations, dude.
That's a great story, man. That's a great success, an American story right there.
Well, and take note, ladies and gentlemen, nothing ventured, nothing gained, however you want to say it. You miss all the 100% of the shots you don't take. Fortune favors the bold. I mean, and this guy's, obviously taking the lemons that he was given in life and made some darn pretty sweet tasting lemonade. So,
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I was working at North Park Mall selling Dish Network for $10 an hour, and people were telling me to go screw myself every 5 minutes that I tried to talk to them about their cable television subscription. So, I came out here, guys, and I mean, it really was a situation of creating opportunity for yourself. And, I went from making $10 an hour working at the mall in Davenport to the day that I arrived in Phoenix, I had a job interview set up on a Friday. The company offered me a $40,000 salary to start the following Monday, and I never looked back, and I've been here ever since. And I've always been that guy that I don't believe in taking steps backwards. So I will turn, opportunities and things away if it means, that there is going to be that step back, because I'm a believer that the only time that you should ever do anything is if it's going to propel your life forward or propel that career forward. And, I've always taken that to heart. And I think a lot of that's just growing up in the Midwest and, being raised the way that I was raised and having those traditional values and morals. And, here I am 10 years later, guys. I did not graduate college. So I do not have a finished degree. I mean, once my injuries and things happened, that was kind of it. And I come from a family where I'm the only person that graduated high school. Nobody else went to college. And, here I am as as of last week, guys, was promoted to the title Director of Athletic Performance, meaning that BioXcellerator, we are creating an entire division of the company simply devoted to athletics and building partnerships. And I get to spearhead that because of the efforts that I put in. So,
that's awesome.
That is
it's
cool.
very
Good
much
for you, brother. Congratulations.
That success story. Thank you.
And without a doubt, man, and it's, like you were said before, it really, you just have that personal ethic within you. Because like you said, even back in the day, you didn't necessarily choose to go to halftime or over to Ribco or whatever it was, these Quad City haunts. You made a choice to kind of take a different route that wasn't so necessarily party orientated or not so productive. So, good for you, man. But that's just the fabric of the human being you are. And, getting into, that's awesome that you guys now have a whole wing necessarily dedicated to athletes. I mean, I went on your page, like I said, I was studying it for a while. You got people with Parkinson's that are getting stem cells. You have people who, trying to address baldness that are getting stem cells. I happen to find it very fascinating with athletes because, you have some obviously high level elite athletes who like, John Morrison, Johnny Mundo, whatever his name are. A lot of these guys been taking bumps for 10, 15, 20 years. Kevin Nash that are coming in and just having, revolutionary, just hugely impactful results from this thing that they call stem cell therapy. And we go back to, Peyton Manning having to go over to Germany and having to get what he had done to his neck and et cetera, et cetera. Give us the baseline, brother. This is what we're working with this conversation. What are stem cells to begin with?
So stem cells, guys, what they actually are, it is the specific regenerative reparative cell in the human body. So when you get injured as a kid, Jeff, I always tell my patients, think back to 5 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old. When you were a kid, you could do anything injure yourself, go out and just do the stupidest things, literally rip your arm off, and you felt like as a kid you could watch it grow back right in front of your face, and you could go back to doing the exact same thing that got you injured like nothing happened, right? Well, go try that in your 20s and your 30s, and then go beyond that and try any of that stuff. It doesn't work, right? The reason why is when you're young, your body is producing a very high level of what is called the adult mesenchymal stem cells. So that is the specific molecular level biology cell in the human body that promotes that regrowth and that regeneration that gives us that fast recovery time. So what we're doing is we're taking athletes that have been around the block for quite a while or taken a lot of bumps and bruises like you discussed, Jeff. And what we're doing is we're implementing fresh adult mesenchymal stem cell directly into orthopedic injury, spine and disc injury, into even the spinal fluid to access the brain for concussion symptoms. And it's giving that body the level of healing that it hasn't probably had in quite a while. And I mean, it's miraculous what it can do.
Well, I'm sorry, Pat, go ahead.
No, these specific cells that you're talking about that regenerate the body in such quick fashion, I'm guessing that HGH levels dictate that quite a bit, right?
That would be correct.
Okay. I was just wondering about that because it coincides with HGH output, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and within some of the, I guess for lack of a better term, controversy is, because obviously we're going to get into it, how there's different application of stem cell therapy in like the States per se, or these different countries, say Germany or Venezuela. What is the source of the stem cells, and what is the best source? I guess I heard from the videos, and help me if I'm wrong, if the best source of stem cells that are the ones that come from yourself.
That would actually not be accurate.
Okay,
so the best source of stem cell is going to be from the umbilical cord of a newborn baby. So, you talked about the controversy, Jeff, and Pat, you kind of alluded to this a little bit as well. 10 years ago, the United States kind of put some bans on the development of stem cell therapy and, really restricted the regulations of what you can do because there was all this controversy about stem cell being extracted from an aborted fetus. That's not quite the case anymore. There's three applications in which you could typically extract stem cell from or for a patient. And at BioXcellerator, 99% of every patient that we're going to be treating, their stem cells are going to come from the umbilical cord of a newborn baby. The reason why, Jeff, is because those stem cells, when they come from that wart and jelly inside the umbilical cord, these are the most aggressive form of fresh cells that you could put back into the human body for that regrowth or that regeneration. So the way that the process works, guys, is our laboratory director will get a phone call at the time that a mother is going into birth saying, Susie Johnson, for example, she's going into labor. Our medical director or our laboratory director will go to the hospital, gown up just like the doctor or any nurse in the delivery room would. And at the time when that baby is delivered, our laboratory director is the one that makes the cut of the umbilical cord instead of the father. The reason why is we're wanting to make sure that the umbilical cord is not damaged in any way or contaminated. What happens after that is that umbilical cord is then transported back to our level 3 ISO certified laboratory environment. Our laboratory director would immediately start that process of testing and safety. And then in Colombia, guys, there's an organization called INVIMA, very similar to kind of what the FDA does here in the United States. INVIMA also requires that we outsource a sample of that same umbilical cord to 3 independent laboratories. So by the time a patient comes down to receive cells from us, the source of those cells has already gone through 4 very vigorous batteries of testing where we're looking for any molecular imbalance within the cell, and then we're looking for anything that can be contaminating or harmful to that patient. And everything has to pass with unanimous colors between all 4 of the facilities. If it does not, INVIMA requires that we take that umbilical cord, quarantine it, and immediately remove it from our laboratory environment, and we would not be able to extract any form of stem cell from that umbilical cord.
So this gets into basically the subject of bioavailability and removing any kind of whatever you guys microplasmas, which is essentially the bacteria in the cells. I noticed that you guys do a very stringent process to make sure these things are very pure stem cells.
Correct. And we do, and whenever a patient would come to us to receive treatment, guys, one of the things that people are amazed about is this is healthcare on a level that is just unrivaled here in the United States. I mean, most procedures here in the United States, 90% of the time, unless you're having a major surgery, the doctor walks in, hey, Pat, this is what we're going to do to you today. Then typically that doctor walks out of the room and an assistant or, a secondary person is going to come in and actually perform the application or the minor procedure with you. At Columbia, it's quite different. Our doctors are so hands-on that, they're even going out to dinner with some of our patients. They take our patients and show them the city when they're there. And one of the things that people are typically commonly amazed with, and some of the feedback that I get, is when you go to receive a stem cell administration with BioXcellerator, our laboratory director actually will come out and meet you and talk about your specific stem cells, show you the testing results, and even show you the paperwork where the mother signed off that she was donating that umbilical cord. So for our patient, they know that we have checked all of the boxes when it comes to, just moral and ethical practices, but also safety regulations.
Yeah, no. So that brings me to, there are many different types of stem cells, aren't there?
There are multiple types of stem cells, and what we're specifically focusing on, Pat, is specifically that adult mesenchymal cell, as that is the regenerative cell.
Okay. Just checking on that.
Well, I mean, God, it's so fantastic to me. Well, something that I've noticed, and when you say, I mean, obviously, BioXcellerator is located in Columbia, and that obviously brings kind of, I guess, its own stigma to it, unfortunately, just because of, the last 20, 30 years. How has that been as far as getting folks to kind of bridge that gap? Because everything I've seen, like Matt, I'll move here. He said something to that effect. He's like, something about that location, it's beautiful. I mean, I think, South America is obviously a beautiful place. You get outside the Medellin drug cartels and all that other stuff. It's a beautiful location. How do you get patients to kind of relax as it relates to where they are?
It's actually, you would think that it's difficult. It does get brought up, guys. Every single patient that I talk to, they always go, all right, man, so come on, be realistic with me. Is it safe? Yes, it's safe. You have arguably, I mean, I could go back a year ago in the history of the Quad Cities when there was a lot of stuff going on in Rock Island and downtown Davenport. That's probably more dangerous than what it is in Medellin right now. A lot of people have that stigma of, Narcos on Netflix, the cocaine cowboy documentaries, and then the Pablo Escobar days 40 years ago, right? But what a lot of people have to stop and realize is that Pablo Escobar was 40 years ago. Let's go back to Detroit, Michigan 40 years ago and talk about how safe of a city that is. Let's talk about Detroit today, right here in our own backyard. Let's talk about Chicago, Illinois. It's the #1 homicide capital in the United States right now. There's always a bad part of the city that you can find if you're looking for it, right? And that just happens whenever you have a mass population of people. Medellin is a city that in 2015 was voted the #1 most innovative city in the entire world. And to your point, Jeff, everybody that goes down there, they just rave about the experience because it's a culture that's very much built on kind of family and an atmosphere and taking care of one another. And they're really big on tourism there as well. So, a lot of times what happens is our patients go there and they go, oh my God, this was completely different than what I expected. Right. And, Kevin Nash is a guy that you mentioned, Jeff. He's actually looking at buying real estate down there.
That's awesome.
I have a patient, I have a regular everyday guy that's going down to do treatment with us next month, and he had me book his hotel an extra night because he's meeting with the realtor to look at buying a second home there for him and his wife to retire. So it's a very, very safe environment, and it's just overcoming that stigma that you alluded to.
Well, and I imagine the level or the frequency of the treatments is going to have to do almost directly correlated with the nature of the trauma, whether it's, like I said, baldness or Parkinson's or whatever. How often do these treatments have to be applied? It's obviously not a one-stop shop.
Most patients, it actually is going to be a one-stop shop.
Oh, wow.
For the orthopedic stuff, the spine and disc stuff, the common things that we're treating on a weekly basis, guys, usually because of the number of stem cell and because of the advanced science that we can have behind it that you can't do here in the United States,
Right.
it normally is going to be a one and done procedure for a patient. Now, in the case of Matt Hughes that we've talked about, Matt suffered the most severe form of traumatic brain injury that a human body can suffer without death. A
Right.
guy like Matt, because his injury was so severe and took such a toll on the body, Matt is doing 3 different treatments with us, but that is a very, very far and few situation. Most
Right.
patients, guys, they come down for 5 days. They arrive on a Sunday. They start treatment on Monday. They usually will wrap up early Friday afternoon, enjoy one last night in the city before they would start their trek back home on a Saturday.
Awesome. So what type of results are we seeing with your patients, the improvements in their health and even their brain function?
I mean, it's incredible, Pat. Here's what people often refer to when I just met with Chris Jericho, the professional wrestler, and he's the lead singer of the rock band Fozzy. He was talking to me the other night about doing stem cell for himself and his kids while he was here in Arizona. And when I was explaining to him the results that Matt Hughes is seeing, or the results that the 10-year-old child who suffered the same brain injury is seeing, he looked at me and went, "Holy crap, this sounds like a miracle drug." Well, that's really the best way to kind of describe it. I mean,
Or the closest we've gotten to the fountain of youth.
Exactly. I mean, when I first came to the company, about a year ago, guys, I'm a skeptic like everybody else, right? Jeff, you talked about the Peyton Manning, the Kobe Bryant, the Tiger Woods all going to Germany. So I knew what stem cell was, but I had no idea the knowledge that I do today. And I always sat there in the back of my mind, guys, and went, does this really work the way that people say it does? Like, this has got to be too good to be true, right? I'll never forget what the game-changing moment was for me, guys. My very first patient was a gentleman from here in Scottsdale, Arizona. He reached out to us because he heard Chael Sonnen talk about his experience with us on his podcast. So this gentleman named Jim gave me a call, said, "David, I've been in pain for 20 years of my life every single day." He had 3 damaged discs in his lower lumbar. And he had already done some surgical procedures. Things didn't work for him. He's still living in a life of pain. He's a business owner. He's a guy that wants to work out again and do things that he's not able to do anymore. So we put him through the process. Luckily, my knowledge base was good enough that I could get him through at the time and, be
Right.
intelligent and understand. And so we put him through, and he says, "All right, David, I want to go ahead and do this." So we get him scheduled. He goes down and he does treatment in January. I'm not kidding you guys. He started his treatment on a Monday. Thursday morning, I got a text message from him that verbatim said, "Holy crap, David, I'm pain-free." Okay, I sat in my office and went, "Jim, what do you mean you're pain-free, right? Like, you've been in pain for 20 years. Now you're pain-free? There's no way. This has got to be – he's bluffing, right?" So he texts me back. He goes, "I'm telling you, man." He goes, "I woke up this morning. I have 0 pain." So a month goes by, guys. He comes back home to Arizona, and I'll never forget, this was the moment when everything really connected with me on an emotional level, and I understood the level of what I offer. Jim gave me a call with tears in his eyes, and you could hear his voice was choked up. And I panicked thinking something was wrong, and he goes, "David, I just want to say thank you." And I went, "Jim, for what?" And he goes, "David, listen." He goes, "I'm a dad, man. I have a 4-year-old son, and I have a 5-year-old son." And he goes, "And for the first time in my life as being a father, I was able to wake up this morning, roll around on the floor and wrestle with my children. That's something I've never been able to do before." And that's
awesome.
the moment when I went, "Oh my God, what I do changes lives." And, it's Matt Hughes. Matt's seen tremendous cognitive repair. His short-term memory has increased. Some of his speech has started to increase. He's seen increases with his left leg functioning at a higher level than what it was pre-treatment. And remember, Matt's only 5 months into his treatment protocol with us. It takes a period of time for those stem cells to acclimate to the body and start that actual regeneration process. I have another child that's 10 years old, suffered the same accident as Matt. This kid has done everything in American standards that you can do from a medical standpoint and plateaued. His dad's a very intelligent guy.
Is that the Zane Wagner?
Yes, that's Zane.
Yeah,
And,
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I mean, his dad, Chad, he shopped us. He shopped the clinic in Germany. He shopped Dr. Neil Reardon in Panama, and he ultimately landed on us because he felt confident in, myself and having conversations with me. I made him believe that this was the correct option for his son, and he loved our medical team as he went through the consultation process. And since Zane has started doing his treatment process with us, guys, as he's come back to America, his speech has drastically increased. His dad's doing basically speech therapy with him on a daily basis. They're seeing improvements there. They're seeing
good.
memory and cognitive improvements. They're seeing physical improvements, to the point that Chad even posted a video on my Facebook a couple weeks ago here, guys, where his son Zane is standing on the side of a swimming pool, bends at both knees, when before he had a left leg that really didn't work much at all. He bends at both knees, jumps himself off the side of the swimming pool into his dad's arm in the pool. That's something that he's never been able to experience ever in his life. So the kid is just seeing amazing improvements. And
That's great.
The feedback that we've gotten from the medical team, guys, is that he is smashing all of his neurological testing that the doctors are putting forth for him as he's going through this process.
Wow.
That's the kind of stories you like to hear, man. That's
Definitely a success story. I like to call this stuff, for lack of a better term, man, just life extension technology. I think we're in the infant stages of stem cell therapy, but where do you see, man, prognosticate for us, if you will, where do you see this kind of therapy and this kind of technology going in the next, several decades, years?
I think it's going to become the future of medicine. And I think a lot of the athletes that are working with us, guys, they're kind of seeing that as well, right? It's one of those things that people are a little bit skeptical of it because it's new, and really because a lot of people just don't have the education on it, or people don't take the time to do the research, and they haven't seen the results that it can produce. Jeff, one of the most groundbreaking articles around stem cell therapy here in 2019, and you guys can look this up while we're sitting here talking, 2 cases this year in the Middle East, stem cell therapy was associated to curing HIV. That's a big deal, right? When you can take somebody who has an ALS or an MS condition that ultimately in America can mean a short-term lifespan to follow, and you can treat them with stem cell, and it shows the ability to not only stop the degeneration of the disease that they're dealing with, but also create reversal effects. This is something that's going to continue to gain traction, and I think it's going to become
especially,
the end thing.
For ALS and MS, it would.
Well, even the guy on the page,
if they wouldn't regulate it out of the country.
Well, and that's another thing I wanted to ask. Because it's a huge disparity between what's able to be applied here in the U.S. as far as stem cells. I think Ryback, and I'm just using, he had multiple, I think, surgeries or procedures on his shoulder, I think he said, but it was basically he could get 1,000 stem cells here, and there it was like 1 point something million. What is that? What's holding that back here in the U.S.?
So basically, it's just the FDA, man. And my personal opinion on it is the fact that stem cell therapy can actually fix your problem. The American Medical Society is kind of built on dollars and cents and capitalism. We don't live in a society.
Wait, David, are you saying the pharmaceutical company has a hold on the politics here in America? Wait a minute.
Isn't it funny how comical that is to us? But yet so brutally just wrong.
Well, it's almost that thing, they'd rather keep you sick than help heal you, but I get it.
Well, and that's the thing, guys. Look, stem cell therapy at the level that we're doing it, we get guys that come to us to do this. They do administrations on their knees in Colombia because we can put 40 million stem cells in a knee, whereas in America, the doctor is going to say, we need to either cut you and replace that knee, which comes with its own set of complications, downtime, you taking off work, physical rehabilitation. There's a whole process, right? And if you do stem cell in America, the FDA says you can do it, but it's so limited, guys. What I always tell my patients when they ask me what's the difference and why do I need to go to Colombia, if you do stem cell in America, it's the equivalent to playing Little League baseball. The moment that you leave United States borders and you go to receive stem cell, it's like you immediately skipped everything else and stepped right into the major leagues. It's that much of a difference. We can treat people with the proper number of cells that they need, whereas in America, there's a drastic cap on how many cells you can receive. There's limitations to the science and the testing that goes behind it. It's really not something that currently American standards want it to be authorized for the everyday patient.
Well, I mean, I had injections in my calf, but they pulled my blood. I injured my calf a couple years back and pulled my blood, spun it, and then injected it back into my calf in different separate places. And I think it actually helped. But I know that the stem cells from the umbilical cord are what you're talking about, that are the fountain of youth.
Yeah, what you did, Pat, that they call that adipose tissue, or if they did it specifically with just your blood instead of pulling actual cells, then that's what they call platelet-rich plasma, which are two different things.
Okay.
What we can do that at our facility, and every now and then, guys, you do get that patient that comes along and says, "Listen, I don't want anybody else's cells. They might be like a germaphobe or have issues with receiving anything that's not their own." So in that event, we can do that. We would have to have that patient come down to the facility, extract their body fat, or what is called adipose tissue. And typically what we'll extract from that, guys, is 50,000 to roughly 100,000 stem cell. Then what happens is that patient now has to go back home for a few weeks, because if we're treating that patient with 100 million stem cells, we need to take the 100,000 cells that we gathered
and turn them into
that replication process, right? Because from a biology standpoint, cells will divide and multiply over a period of time. So then roughly about a month later, guys, they'll come back down and then they would receive their treatment. We can also do that with bone marrow. Obviously, that's a little bit more invasive. And with bone marrow, you usually get 100 to 200,000 cells, but it would be the same exact process, 2 visits to the facility.
Wow. That's interesting. Very interesting.
Something I noticed, and I don't know if you have any clue about this, and I don't even know if this is a nurse's thing. A lot of the videos when they were giving IVs to everybody, there was some kind of writing on it, like powerful, healing, energy, come back, or whatever it was. And that honestly reminded me, we've spoken about it before, the work of Masamuro Emoto. Basically, he would write certain things on water, and the water would have a certain structure. Do you know, I mean, am I just picking something up that...
No, I mean, we
almost
do
a little bit of metaphysical
patient.
Aspect of it, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, our doctors, I mean, I guess it's just kind of a cultural thing within Colombia. They believe that the cells can hear you, or that you can tell the cells, what you're looking to accomplish. And, like I had Rey Mysterio Jr. down there, and he said, "I want to fly." And I had a professional wrestler named Brian Cage who goes by the nickname The Machine, and he wrote on his to become a real life superhero, So it's just kind of creating that positive mindset. And the thing is for us guys, this is so different than anything that an athlete or that a patient has ever done, because this isn't a setting where you go and you're in a hospital or medical facility 24 hours a day for 5 days. It's 3 to 4 hours a day of the actual treatment. When a patient goes to Colombia to receive treatment with us, they get to actually enjoy a vacation out of this as well. And, we want to always keep them in that positive mindset and keep them happy and keep them healthy, and I think that's a lot to do with it, guys. It's having them subconsciously think, what is my goal? Why am I doing this treatment? What are the results that I'm looking to achieve?
Right.
And, everyone's obviously out for something different. Everyone's, ailment or whatever, for lack of a better term, is different. And, Ryback was just like, I just want a better quality of life. And with those guys, I mean, I'm a professional wrestling guy, or even, MMA guys like Pat. I mean, that's having lived a hard life, man. So when you get into, older ages, it sucks. But this just sounds like, I mean, you're Kevin Nash's. They're denoting just huge gains from it.
Yeah, it's crazy,
works.
Guys. And, and you kind of alluded to the fact that you're a wrestling guy and an MMA guy, and the reason why I'm the one that's kind of been spearheading this entire project with BioXcellerator. I'm the one that's talking to these athletes, getting out in front of them, traveling to go meet them at some event or any opportunity that I can to connect. And, the biggest thing that I've been promoting with both the MMA world and with the professional wrestling world is to change the businesses for the better, Jeff. I was talking to Pat a little bit about this earlier today on the phone when we were discussing. And, for me, I've had those concussions at 31 years old. There are things that I experience where it sometimes can be hard for me to control my moods or my temper, and as I get older, I'm starting to see these things are becoming harder to deal with, right? And so what I'm very passionate about is changing the business of MMA at the UFC level or at the Bellator level. What I want to change is I want to change the wrestling business at the WWE level, where we can take these athletes and make it standard protocol that if a Pat Miletich is in the ring and suffers some form of concussion, that organization will offer that athlete some level of treatment with BioXcellerator so that we can protect that athlete's brain, keep them healthy, make sure that they don't have to miss a significant portion of their career due to concussion symptoms. And then more importantly, guys, look, athletic careers don't last forever, right? Eventually, we all have to hang it up. What happens when I have to stop playing football or Pat's got to stop fighting and we have to be regular guys and we have to be husbands and we have to be fathers? So it's making sure that we can keep that athlete around. And that's why with us guys, we're getting ready to become the first clinic in the entire world that's going to be doing clinical trials of CTE being treated with stem cell therapy.
Yeah, great. That's great to hear. And I tell you what, I was I won't say which group it was, but I was visiting some special forces guys and hanging out with them a little bit. I think it was probably about a year ago, and they took me into their rehab facility, but it had float tanks. It had a yoga room. It's got, big screen computers with guys sitting in chairs doing, focus drills and stuff and concentration patterns and all kinds of stuff. And it was cool to watch, and talking to the head scientist there. The NFL goes to those guys for the science on, TBIs and CTE. And it was interesting to hear them talk. And this would make a good program, obviously, where the VA and all of its medications wouldn't be needed, and doing this for our veterans who've been blown up.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, Pat, because I come from a military family. I mean, when I graduated high school, that was the first thing I tried to do. And I think now in life, I mean, I wish I still would have had the opportunity to serve, but obviously I think I've found what my calling was in terms of helping people. And for me, one thing that I'm passionate about, and I've talked to some people about this, is actually figuring out a way that we can work with veterans, because obviously, these people sacrifice everything and then they come back, and unfortunately, they're not given the help that they need, and a lot of times not even anywhere close to the help that they need. And so I just had WWE professional wrestler Bobby Lashley was just at our facility 2 weeks ago, and a lot of people know that he spent a lot of time in the Army previous to his wrestling career. And I've already started talking to him about how we can work with Wounded Warriors Project, how we can start kind of creating some different opportunities so that these men and women that do come back and they do have significant injury or traumatic brain injury or whatever it may be, that there's something that we can do to have a partnership in place to offer these men and women a better level of healthcare and protection.
Well, I would say, what would be really cool, and I think be very marketable, so to speak, to get the attention of everybody else, especially our politicians, would be bring a bunch of guys who were special forces, guys who were, part of, all the different branches, special forces, and I tell you what, that would make a huge statement towards our politicians about getting these guys taken care of. Instead of, look, if I want my tax dollars spent on veterans, I want it spent wisely, and I want it spent on regeneration, not doping them up.
Yeah, exactly.
I want them to get better, not sicker, and they're dumping this stuff in them. And I get a lot of calls, messages, stuff like that from veterans who are having a lot of problems physically, mentally, and man. I mean, I say green light on that big time.
Absolutely. And that's something that, there's only so much time in a day, and I'm one person, and, we're kind of figuring out what's the path that we're heading on this, and we're making a lot of traction. I mean, I feel like I've kind of gone about things the right way, and I've been fortunate enough, guys, to make some amazing contacts and find a lot of people that are just as passionate about these different movements or these different things that I am. And, the support that I've received from my peers in terms of wanting to open doors or introduce me to people has just been incredible. I mean, Eric Stoffers, our CEO of BioXcellerator, really kind of handed the keys to me back in May. And here we are, and we're getting ready to go into October here in a couple of weeks. And I mean, just in 6 months, things have just night and day changed to where even my job title with the company has changed. So, it's very cool to see this all take place, and I think it's only going to continue to snowball.
That's awesome. And maybe there's a chance I can give you a couple names of some good special forces friends, veterans who, might end up down there and being great on the microphone and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We would love to talk to him.
That'd be great.
And I think it's really helpful for people to really realize, man. I mean, kind of preemptive healthcare is kind of taking care of yourself, but you know, this kind of stuff is more information gets out about this, and people are becoming more educated, and they're realizing it is within the realm of possibility to have these kind of things. You know, I'm just anxious to see how this stuff plays out and how these therapies go for all of these guys over the long term, man. It's fantastic. You're on the cusp of some pretty revolutionary stuff, man.
Yeah, and the cool thing, guys, is there, you know, especially with some of these athletes and things that we work with, I do get the opportunity to see some of these individuals, you know, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days post-treatment. But, you know, for me, outside of just the athletes that I'm working with, that's a very, very small number of the people that I talk to on an everyday basis. You know, I still talk to 20 to 30 every day.
Right.
In terms of, you know, they're interested in stem cell. And I try to do a very good job. I mean, I give everybody my cell phone number. I do all my business from my cell phone, not the business line, because I want them to have that human connection that, hey, David Truitt is my guy, right? If I have a question, I can text him at any time. I can email him. I can call him. And I know that he has my best interest in mind and that he's going to respond and he's going to make me comfortable or answer my question or overcome my objection. So, you know, our company focus is just built on a little bit of a different dynamic. We don't just say, hey, great, I'm going to talk to you today, and then pass the buck to the next person. I would see that patient from the time that they reach out to BioXcellerator to the time that they go down and do treatment. And even while they're at treatment, guys, I'm posting stuff on my own personal Instagram that, hey, my client, Jeff Smith, is at BioXcellerator right now, and man, he's raving about, you know, just everything that he's seen today or the professionalism of the staff. And, you know, we want to create as much awareness as possible, but I don't separate, you know, I guess I don't separate people into categories of athlete, right? This person's important, and then this person, you're just an everyday guy. Right. They're all patients. Everybody's coming to us for one reason. Is it cool to work with a Kevin Nash or a Matt Hughes? Yeah, it's cool. I grew up a sports fan. These are guys that some of these guys were heroes to me, but it's a lot cooler when you get to take somebody that has an MS, an ALS, a Parkinson's, a brain injury, something that's severely hindering their life, and then you get to help treat them. And then a couple months later, another family member reaches out and goes, my uncle is seeing amazing results because of you. He told me to give you a call directly. Please help me. That's the biggest reward out of all of this, because
very cool.
You're seeing the proof in the pudding at that point, guys.
Yeah. Mouth to mouth advertising.
That's, I mean,
testimonials.
Absolutely. And that's something that, you know, look, we're not a company that spends a ton of money on digital marketing and radio ads and TV ads, all of that. I mean, we let our work speak for itself. And, you know, it's due to the patients that are willing to go out and talk about their experience with us, and due to some of the athletes that we're working with. I mean, you know, the quality of our leads has drastically increased. The number of lead flow that we're getting in on a daily basis of people interested is drastically increased, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. And ultimately, guys, the company keeps growing and growing and growing, and I'm very fortunate to be a part of it.
That's awesome. Well, wow. Colombia is being smart with tourism and with medical procedures and drawing a lot of money down its way. So America might want to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we're hoping that with some of the things that we're working on, Pat, that, you know, I feel that if I can land one of these major sports organizations, if I can get Dana White and the UFC to create a partnership with us to protect, you know, like a Ben Askren in his fight at UFC 239, right? That's a guy that probably needs our concussion protocol, right? Not to be that guy, but I was there. I mean, I saw it on the floor, and guys, I was sitting 10 rows back, and my seat was right on the rail. So I literally watched his team carry him off the floor, and if you could have seen his face from my perspective, there was nothing going on. I mean, it was lights out for Ben, and it's unfortunate, right? That's going to create some long-term damage to his body that he might not see yet, but it's going to be there later. I mean, that was a significant brain injury. And, you know, if I can get a UFC on board, or if I can get a WWE on board, we're talking a major American sports organization where that's going to command attention. And I think something like that can really kind of get that needle moving, or get people to at least reevaluate the stance on this. And if we can make even just a little bit of improvement in the next couple of years, I mean, that's a win.
Well, you know, and every American out there is tired of reading about athletes run amok on alcohol and drugs, right? Just
Yeah.
just because, to be honest with you, I just know, having been a professional athlete, a fighter, all that sort of stuff, it's easy to fall into the groove of self-medication.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So that's important that these guys, do get the healing for that purpose, just to be able to operate correctly in society.
Well, and that's the thing. That's why, for us, we're pushing so hard with CTE awareness and with concussion protocol. The number one hot topic item outside of the national anthem stance in with the NFL is concussions. I mean, it's something that it's affecting, the sport of football all the way down to Pee Wee football, where now, 10 years ago, even people would say, yes, my son's going to play football. Well, now, because of everything that's come out with concussions and the discovery of CTE here a couple years ago,
Right.
parents are now looking at it going, hey, I don't know if I want my kid to do that, because there's not enough out there in the community that offers that athlete or that child enough protection. So, that's something that we're very passionate about.
Yeah, what you're saying, though, is a great example. I mean, I played football at Bettendorf High School in the mid 80s, and we dressed on our varsity team. We dressed over about 100 guys for home games. And now when I go to the games and see them, I mean, maybe half that, maybe, and the other teams are having trouble even fielding an offense and defense.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it's the sport of football has definitely taken a hit. I don't think mixed martial arts, boxing, other combative sports have taken a hit simply because, well, they haven't been around as long, so you haven't seen the damage as much for as long. That's one of the reasons. But and I think, everybody says, well, you go into it knowing you're going to get concussions.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, most football players now, especially, what you're getting into, and you got to understand your environment that you're signing up for. But, I think realistically, guys, I mean, if we can make any of the sports just a little bit safer, is BioXcellerator ever going to be able to stop a concussion from happening? Absolutely not, right? I mean, it's always going to happen in a contact sport, but can we make sure that concussion doesn't lead to, a alcohol problem, a drug addiction, chronic pain,
What's it saying? As the education and as the technology grows on it, you're able to mitigate the damage through institutions like yourself. And I met, and I don't mean to put him on blast, and I don't know if he's specifically still associated with this organization, but Chris Nowinski, who won the Tough Enough Challenge for WWE back in the day, wound up working with an organization called the Sports Legacy Institute. He's the one who got a hold of Chris Benoit's dad to be able to give his brain to the institute to find out basically the ridiculous trauma, the protein deficiencies, etc. He had the brain of like an 80 or 90-year-old man just because of his particular style of wrestling with head trauma. So like you said, David, being able to link up with these organizations to, like you said, these guys are going to be receiving some serious damage. So through the technology and linking up with organizations like yourself and you guys can help mitigate that damage significantly, bringing more awareness. So yeah, it's kudos to you guys.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that, Jeff, that you mentioned Chris Benoit. I actually, about 3 weeks ago in Chicago, I met his son, David Benoit. And it's really funny that you mentioned this because I just had conversations with Chris Jericho on Thursday, and Chris is going to introduce me to Chris Nowinski because a lot of people may not know this,
Nice.
but Chris Nowinski was the associate doctor that discovered CTE. So when we start our clinical trials on CTE with the use
That's
of stem
awesome.
cell, I want to get Chris Nowinski involved in that.
Wow,
So
yeah.
Jericho's going to make that connection. But then you mentioned Chris Benoit, and it's funny. I mean, you just fell right into my recent developments. So David Benoit and I have been texting back and forth and talking to each other just over the last couple of days here, guys. And I'm going to be in Los Angeles on October 4th, backstage at the 20th anniversary of SmackDown because of Kurt Angle. So David Benoit
Nice.
found that out from talking to me. He's going to fly down, and he's actually shooting a documentary for Vice TV about his dad and concussions and traumatic brain injury.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
he's going to sit down and do some filming with myself to talk about what we could have done for his dad if this would have been available 13 years ago. But we're also going to shoot some footage on our end because I am pressing to change the wrestling world and some of these businesses. And David's going to sit down and candidly talk about what this would have meant to his family, how this could have been different for the wrestling world, and how if this was something that was available and it was accepted here in the United States 10 years ago, 13 years ago, maybe his father would still be here. So I'm extremely, extremely excited for that opportunity.
Wow, that's cool. Well, see, look at me. I got the pulse, and I don't even
The
freaking know it
stars
over here.
aligned on that one. That
Yeah.
conversation, huh?
Yeah, I met Chris years ago when I first moved to St. Louis. He was at a party, and I'm a wrestling mark, dude. So I immediately marked out, and I'm just like starting to talk wrestling. But at the time, I wanted to produce a documentary, and I still do, called "The Death of Wrestling." Not just the way how wrestling has changed throughout the years, but the literal, like, how these guys are dying so much. And, you know, some of the stuff like traumatic brain injury obviously played into it. So, yeah, cool. Great, man. Chris Nowinski, I'm glad you guys are going to link up, dude, because that guy, I mean, he, like you said, he changed the game. When he got a hold of Chris Benoit's brain, he helped change the game. So the education's there. So the education with the therapy, with the technology, sky's the limit, man. You got epigenetics thrown in there. You got all this, man. We're living in a brave new world, man. There's the possibilities are honestly endless. Champ, do you have anything left for my man here before we let him sign
I don't.
on?
I think this was a great interview. Great job, Jeff. And I tell you what, David, thank you very much for joining us, because this was very informative. I think for everybody who's going to hear it. And
Yeah,
myself,
and you know, and guys, just so that your audience kind of has an awareness. Look, I mean, we don't only work with athletes, guys.
Right.
99% of every patient that we work with is an everyday guy, just like myself. And look, we treat everything from orthopedic injury. We treat spine and disc injury. You know, if there's a guy out there that has bulging disc, herniated disc degeneration disease, you don't have to do spinal fusion. Stem cell can actually help regrow and regenerate those discs, even if there's just minimal disc left. We treat, you know, Alzheimer's, dementia, traumatic brain injury. We're treating congestive heart failure. I mean, we pretty much treat everything, guys, with the exception of cancer. So if there's anybody out there that has any interest in learning if this is an option for them, they can reach out to me directly. They can reach out to BioXcellerator. You know, it's www.BioXcellerator.com. They can reach out to me. It's David Truitt, Truitt. And, you know, I'm on social media. You can find me at Iowa Hawks Fan 06 on both Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So if anybody has any questions, I mean, feel free to reach out to me at any time. And, you know, we want to talk to as many people as possible and educate people on what their options are before they go under the knife, before they do spinal fusions, or before a doctor tells them that, unfortunately, here in American standards, there's not anything that can be done to treat their condition. It's quite the opposite. There's options. You just got to explore them.
Less is becoming more, ladies and gentlemen. Less is more.
Say your Twitter address again one more time, please.
My Twitter address is going to be Iowa Hawks Fan 06. And that is also my Instagram. And then you can look me up on Facebook that way as well. Or you can just search David Truitt, which is Truitt.
I got you now. Iowa Hawk Fan 06.
Hawks with an S.
So much appreciated,
Hawks.
brother. Continued success, the National Director of Athletic Performance. Dave
Thank
Truitt.
you very much, sir.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.